Hello and welcome to this week's show where we look at action and stunts on film and television. Where to start today? It's one of those occasions where you always do your best to think, right, I've got to say a few words at the top of this, and then you think, well, what can I possibly say? I'll explain that in a moment. This week is an interview. It's an interview with a stuntman, stunt coordinator, producer, writer, director, musician, actor. I mean, he can do it all. And he is responsible for some of the most extraordinary pieces of action that you will have seen on film or television. Without question. Without question. I suspect, as many do, but I suspect particularly that the action world on television and film, whether it be television series or big budget features, would be not quite as an exciting place if it wasn't for this very individual. Our guest this week is a man who has a podcast now. Didn't have a podcast back then when I started watching him, but it's called Stunt Stories, and he's effectively responsible for this entire show. His name is Corey Eubanks. He is a remarkable individual. And I told him all about him being responsible for this at the top of this interview, and well, this is what he said. Firstly, I need to say that this is a huge honour to have you here, because I was such a fan of Stunt Stories when it came out first. When I saw it on YouTube originally, which is how it worked. And the reason that this show happens is primarily because of you. Now, there's just no other way of saying it. It was the premise that I found really simple. You standing there, one camera, and you talking to, you might have the odd bit of footage from time to time, but 9 times out of 10, it was you telling a story. And it was compelling. It was compelling because you're that kind of character, and you talk to that person. You're not talking to everybody who's watching. You're talking to one person at a time, and you're making everything sound fantastic. And not only that, but you're explaining everything. It's very clear. You can sense the excitement about the story that you're telling and the thing leading up to that. So to have you on this show is amazing, and thank you very much indeed for doing that. I'm absolutely thrilled.
Well, thank you for thinking of me, and I'm glad I was able to do this for you. This is going to be fun.
I think it was back in 2013. I did my first video. You were doing, I saw Stunt Stories about 2012, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, I think it was the first one about 2013. I saw, right, I'm going to do that. And some of my early videos, it looks very one camera stuff. I managed to, it's now a clip show, effectively, is what it is, with little bits and pieces. But that's how it started. So you are to blame for the success of my channel. And thank you very much. If you've got any other odd shoes knocking about, I'll take those as well. Thank you very much indeed. You've talked before about the way in which you got onto the show Dukes of Hazzard, for instance, your dad being the producer and a notable entertainer and a personality. And in fact, he was doing it. This is Bob Eubanks, for those people who don't know, did a show called The Newlywed Game, which we took over here. It was a big success over here. It was called Mr. and Mrs. over here.
No kidding.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. over here. Yeah, same concept. We had a guy called Derek Beatty was the host of that show. Ran for years. It was a massive success. But to complete the whole thing was that you were boxing prior to this as well. I know a lot of people, they will remember the fact that you did all the stuff with rodeo riding and then doing the Dukes of Hazzard. But in order to get into the business, I'm right in saying that you were, was it a Golden Gloves tournament that you were training for in a gymnasium? How did that happen from a movie that you were selected for?
Well, my dream was to become a professional fighter, to be like a Roberto Duran. He was I idolized Roberto Duran, and I would copy all of his mannerisms, his moves, the way he fought. I just studied every fight he ever had, and wanted to be like Roberto Duran. I was training at a little gym in Canoga Park called the Left Hook Gym. And my trainer, Ray Notaro, was training Sylvester Stallone for Rocky, or had already trained him for Rocky. I used to spar with Frank Stallone, Sly's brother.
Right.
And also an actor named Tony Danza. But yeah, I competed in the Golden Gloves, the Junior Olympics, the Diamond Belt. I had 47 amateur bouts. I was 46-1. That was my record. And I was in the gym training when they came in scouting for a movie called The Sting 2 with Jackie Gleason and Carl Malden and Mac Davis. I think this was in 1980 or 81.
Okay.
And because when someone comes into your gym, new faces, you know right away, who are these guys? And they were with cameras and stuff, and you're taking pictures of us, and you're kind of like, why are you taking a picture of me? And all of a sudden someone walked up and tapped me on my shoulder. I was on a speed bag.
Okay.
And asked me if I would be interested in being in a movie called The Sting 2, just as background. He goes, just doing, I go, what would you want me to do? Just what you're doing right now. We just want to have you in the background, and Mac Davis will be talking to Jackie Gleason, and we'll see you in the background hitting the speed bag. And I said, are you going to pay me for this? They said, yes. I said, okay, I'm in.
Yep, so count me in. Okay.
Yeah. So it was like the following week, it was at Universal. Well, then I was moved off the speed bag and then put onto a heavy bag. And like I said, I was at the prime of my fighting. I was in shape. I was toned and ready for, competing.
Mm-hmm.
And on the set, maybe I was trying to show off a little bit, probably knowing me. And all of a sudden, Mac Davis comes over with a gentleman named Ron Stein, who was the stunt coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, hey, Corey, can we talk to you for a second? I stepped aside and they said, hey, we got a fight scene. We need to have two guys in the ring sparring. And would you be interested in doing that with this guy? And I said, yeah. And Ron Stein introduced himself as the stunt coordinator. And he said, we'll Taft-Hartley you for this. And I'm like, what does that mean? He says, well, because you're throwing punches, it's considered a stunt. And that makes you eligible to join the Screen Actors Guild.
Right.
At that moment in my life, I didn't know if I wanted to be I was focused on being a professional fighter, but I'd always had dreamt of being a stuntman. There's two different paths.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I couldn't do both.
Okay.
And because I was brought up with my father, as you mentioned, Bob Eubanks, he used to he was a weekend rodeo cowboy. He would team rope and rope calves, and we'd go out to this place, the Paramount Ranch.
Right.
And I would hear and meet other stuntmen out there and listen to their stories and whatnot. And I thought, wow, how would it be to be a professional stuntman? That'd be so cool. I didn't know you could make a living doing it.
Right.
But when this movie came along and I was asked to be in The Sting 2, it was just kind of like, I don't know, maybe God was saying, no, you're not going to be a professional fighter. You're going to be a professional stuntman and go down that path. And so getting Taft-Hartley on that movie was a blessing, because then as you're privy to, we talked about, my dad knew the executive producer of the Dukes of Hazzard, a gentleman named Paul Picard.
Right.
Because he had hired my dad to do the Newlywed Game.
Mm-hmm.
So thank God for that, because my dad made a phone call on a Friday night while watching the Dukes of Hazzard. He called Paul Picard, and that's how I was able to get on that show.
Well, you've got to have an in, right? You've said yourself, good old-fashioned nepotism got me in, but that's what it was. If it wasn't that, you were going to have to do it in some other way, and you managed to find an in, which was the whole dealing with the boxing, and being able to do it. And of course, Dukes of Hazzard was just ludicrous. It was unbelievably successful, particularly over here. I don't know whether, obviously you're familiar with how successful it was in the States, but in the UK, just crazy. It was prime time Saturday evening, 6 p.m. right about now here in the UK on a Saturday night. There would be sport during the day, show called Grandstand. That would be the sports show. directly after that, you'd have like local news, and then bang, Dukes of Hazzard. That would be the first thing. And it was that evening when family was sitting down to have something to eat in the evening. They'd be watching the TV, and Waylon Jennings' theme tune that went straight into the charts, and everything was, it was just amazing. It was such a huge success, and ran for so long. You had some amazing experiences on there, and I wanted to know what working with Al Wyatt was like, because obviously he must have been just an incredible character. You and a number of others who were responsible for jumping the General Lee, but also for driving all of those other vehicles in the show.
I have to tell you that Alan Wyatt Jr., first of all, he was just gifted. He was just such a phenomenal athlete. His athleticism was just off the charts. His sense of timing was just off the charts, just always spot on.
Right. Probably
the best thing ever for me was to had the opportunity to, when I was doubling Luke, Tom Wopat, to ride passenger with Al Wyatt Jr., because to be able to look over and see how he'd hold the steering wheel, and when he would hit the emergency brake, when he would go to the throttle, and just kind of get that feel. It's hard to really explain. You just get this feel of the momentum and the way that it would glide. It was so fluid. And I'm like, okay, well, when I'm going to be driving and hitting the emergency brake and getting to the throttle and power sliding, today they call it drifting.
Yeah.
Same thing. It was that feel. And you knew that, oh, that's the same feeling with this vehicle that I had in the passenger seat when Alan was driving.
Right.
And his sense of timing. A lot of times we're going to time things out. A couple of cars are coming down the road and they're going 45 miles an hour. There's just a car length and a half for you to fit right in the middle. And when he would take off and how fast he would go and pitch it to get in between those cars was just a sense of timing that I think it was just something he was born with. And I got to absorb some of that.
Right.
And that's what really helped me with my career as far as vehicular stunts was Al Wyatt Jr.
So visual learning, being there and watching him and thinking, okay, and just remembering where everything was. That time, I suppose nowadays people do it with YouTube and with various other bits and pieces. They watch, instead of going to a book somewhere and trying to understand it, you were able to watch him in action and soak that up like a sponge.
Yeah, but it's even more in depth than that, because, as I say, the feel,
right,
the feel of it. When you're watching something on YouTube, you can't absorb that feeling.
No, you're not experiencing it. No, I see that.
Yeah, the sense of speed, the sense of being pitched one direction in the vehicle and when to snap back the other direction, and how violent that is. And it was really the only way I could explain it was just this feeling that you got. And then I just tried to mimic that when I would be behind the steering wheel.
He was quite a loose kind of character too, as just some of the stuff that I've read about him and seen about him. I seem to remember somebody saying, it might even have been you, but I remember somebody saying he turned up on the set one day, had his racing outfit on, he had the helmet on, he's wearing flip-flops, like it sort of, that was just a little thing that he had going on. Is there any truth in that? I know he was quite a character to say the least, but I imagine that's possibly part of his charm, was it?
Yeah, he's, he lived in Malibu, California, and loved the ocean, would surf. He'd show up in OP shorts and flip-flops and
blonde flowing locks. Yeah.
And did jump the General Lee one time just wearing flip-flops, and that was it. And just a practical joker. There was one time I was going to jump over a semi-truck lengthwise.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Wow, yeah.
And actually ended up landing on its windshield. We were experimenting back there, taking the jump ramps and getting different angles. And
okay,
I was the guinea pig for the experiments. And this one didn't go well, and I ended up landing on my windshield. But prior to that, at number one, strapped in, nervous, sweating, this is an experiment. I don't know if it's going to go good or bad. And Alan's standing next to me, smoking a cigarette. And right when they said, roll cameras, action, Corey, he took a drag off his cigarette and dropped his cigarette right between my crotch. And burning my butt cheek, and I'm trying to smash it out with one butt cheek and smash it with the other as I'm approaching my ramp. So it wasn't funny at the time, but
tricky trying to keep a cool head whilst everything else is burning below the waist.
Yeah.
He did strike as being an extraordinary character, a terrible loss too, at a relatively young age. I mean, there's no other way around it. And obviously his stamp on the business is still felt today, clearly by you and by those who worked with him.
Yes. And the other thing I could say about Al Wyatt Jr. is not once, ever, under any circumstance, that I ever see him get angry.
Right.
He would
there's a gift right there.
He would always, he said, "Oh, it's all good. It's all right." Nothing would upset him. I miss that man a lot. Yeah.
If only there was more like him, I say, in that respect.
Yes.
There's a wonderful interview of you on YouTube with, and I want to pronounce this correctly, GWAT TV, GWAT TV, and the presenter's a guy called Ronnie, and he says, and I quote, "You are one of the top 3 stunt drivers in the world, and the expression on your face is as though you've been hit by a steam train, like it's a complete shock to you, but." Obviously, looking at the body of work and the type of movies and television and work that you're asked to do on a regular basis, even now after the career that you've had, you've got to be the first or second phone call these days. Is that still the same thing? Do people come to you and go, Corey, here's the thing. You're not getting that situation where we've tried everybody else, Corey, and there's nobody else. That's surely not a thing anymore, right?
Well, I don't get the phone calls just to be one of the ND stunt drivers. We're going to have 15 guys in a car chase and you want to be number 9, which is the fun thing to do because there's not much pressure. You're not under the microscope.
Yep.
You're just one of the ND stunt guys and you get to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm normally hired to be in the lead car doing that stunt that we don't know if we can execute it successfully. So Corey, you figure it out.
Okay.
And I'm just being honest. I normally get called for, we got one take, we got one car. It's a lot of money we're spending on this stunt, and we're counting on you. And it's a lot of pressure. And there's a lot of times I'm envious of the other stunt guys that are just the ND stunt guys that just get to fill in around, and it doesn't really matter if they are on their mark or if they're inconsistent with what they do.
Right.
And it's a little frustrating at times. I'll hear of a car show that's going and there's a bunch of guys working on it. And I'm like, how come I'm not on that just being one of the ND guys? And I don't know if they think it's because I don't want to, but
no.
Yeah.
Looking through your career, we're going to touch on some bigger gags later on, but I know that you did experience that in 1985, you worked on Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which you said yourself, doubling Paul Rubin. And, as far as that was concerned, at the time, you go, hey, cool. It's a little comedy picture. It's got this, it's got that in it. But it evidently turned out to be way bigger than anticipated. And certainly from your point of view, I mean, I imagine up until Fast Five, this could have been one of the most dangerous pictures you worked on.
Yes. I had to go to the hospital twice dressed as Pee Wee Herman. And, the first one was when I had to ride a bucking bull, and there's a rodeo sequence and he's trying to go undercover and puts on a cowboy hat. And next thing you know, they put him on this bull. And I used to ride bulls professionally in the PRCA. Yeah. Been on about 300 bucking bulls. I was never very good, but it was a lot of fun for me. So I knew what I was doing. And I knew that the stock contractor, Tom Mitchell, had this brindle bucking bull named TJ Hooker. He was named TJ Hooker because he liked to hook people with his horns.
Okay.
And so long story short, I'm doubling Paul Rubens, and we come out of this buck and shoot, and this bull starts to spin, and I start to fall off the side, and he throws a horn back and hits me in the back of the head. And I wake up on a gurney going into the ER in Pomona, California.
So you how long were you out for?
Maybe
a long trip.
A while. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And that's the only part I remember. I only remember, the doors opening and seeing the ceiling and going, oh, great, I'm in the hospital again. And the thing that was funny about it is there was this nurse that was there that was really super cute. And I was like at one point feeling better and trying to flirt a little bit. And I remember looking over and seeing my reflection in this window.
Who's that guy?
I got the red lipstick on and the little bow tie and the hair. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'm Pee Wee Herman. And they don't know I'm working on a movie.
No, they just think it's a random dude.
Just some weird freak that came in dressed like whatever I was, wearing that little gray suit. Yeah. And then it happened again when I had to jump a bicycle on the same movie over a 17-foot high fence. And they had to pull me in with a cable system.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I went 72 feet. And we built all of these cardboard boxes, 1,000 2-foot by 2-foot cardboard boxes as a catch pad. Wow. And I overshot them all and hit 3 boxes and augured into the ground and in my head. And again, I was out and taken to the hospital for the second time dressed as Pee Wee Herman.
You wouldn't think you'd be getting danger money for a picture like that, but very clearly it was right up there. I mean, every box ticked as far as that was concerned. I suppose that's the thing, though. You look at some of these bigger pictures, you maybe expect, okay, well, this has got this in it, and this has got a fire gag in it, and this has got a big car turnover. So they will take, the stunt engineers will do all the specifications they can, all the safety bits and pieces, and maybe in certain situations you think, in here, it's falling off a bike. Okay, I can do this, and we're going to work bits and pieces out. But did it just get to the stage where it became much bigger as it went on, and the propulsion took you further than anticipated? Was that the deal?
No, we had rehearsed it the Friday before.
Okay,
we put up 2 poles in a string to simulate the height of the chain link fence.
Okay.
A special effects man named Bruce Robles was operating this winch system. It was a VW engine powered winch that would coil up the cable.
Right.
It had handlebars like a motorcycle and a clutch. But he'd put it in gear and then let the clutch out. No speedometer, just a tachometer.
Right.
So he'd be like in second gear at 2,000 RPMs. This is how fast Corey's going. Okay. Visually, we didn't know. And we did like 3 or 4 jumps that Friday. The first jump, I barely made the boxes. We picked up the speed and changed the angle of the ramp. And by the end of the day, I was flying, clearing the string at 17 feet and going right into the middle of the boxes. Everything was sweet.
Okay.
Of course, for that, I was wearing a helmet and hard plastic elbows and knee pads. And because when you crash a bicycle into those boxes, somehow the bike still hits you.
Yeah, exactly.
So now the weekend passes. It's Monday afternoon. We get the same setup. I'm dressed like Pee Wee Herman at the end of this cable. Everything with Bruce Robles, thumbs up, everyone's good. And I see Paul Baxley, the stunt coordinator, walk up to Bruce Robles, who's about maybe 200 feet from me. He pats him on the back and points over the fence.
Right.
And turns to me and gives me a thumbs up. And I remember thinking to myself, what was that conversation about? What little coaching did he just give Bruce Robles? Because we got this dialed in. We have it figured out from Friday. The second they called action and that thing took off, I'm like, oh my God, this is much faster than what we had rehearsed.
Wow.
And on the back lot at Warner Brothers, these buildings are going by me. And be honest with you, if you were there, you like everyone else would have seen the skid mark going up the jump ramp because I was on the brakes.
You were braking going up.
Trying to slow it down.
Wow.
And it flew. And as soon as I went over the top of that fence, I just went to chuck the bike to try to go down. But when you're still being pitched up, it's hard to fight gravity to make yourself go down, trying to get to those boxes. And like I said, I only crushed 3 of them and then hit my head on the grass.
Only 3 of them. So you managed to hit 3. Wow. I wonder if he said, send it. That was the only advice he gave him. Pat him on the back and go for it. Wow. Well, it's a good job you're here to tell the tale. Yeah. It could have been much worse. Another picture that you worked on, I've always been fascinated by this and always as far as car gags are concerned. Anyway, you of course now everybody knows you have a reputation for these extraordinary car gags. But there was another guy and a good friend of yours, Russell Solberg, who was responsible for one of the most remarkable car gags at the time in the movie No Man's Land. Now,
Yes.
I know that you were involved in this, but were you involved in that sequence as he pipes through the Pepsi wagon?
No, I was the stunt coordinator. That was my very first film as a stunt coordinator.
Oh, I see.
With Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen, yeah.
And I came up with that gag.
Oh,
and
nice. Okay.
I pitched it to the producer, Duncan Henderson.
Right.
Who just passed away, by the way. I
just really?
I worked with him up in Canada on Transformers 7.
Okay.
And just recently he passed away. But yeah, Russell, and the thing I felt for Russell Solberg about that stunt, because we were jackknifing that semi-trailer.
Yep.
And then as it's coming toward him, he's going to come and hit a pipe ramp and go through it.
Yeah.
The day that we were going to do it, there were all this cloud cover, and the clouds would come in front of the sun, and all of a sudden you got to change the f-stop on the camera, because back then we're shooting film.
Mm-hmm.
And Russell's all strapped in, and loosen them up, let them breathe, let them relax for a few minutes. And then the clouds would go by, and then we're getting ready to go, get Russell strapped in. That happened at least 4 or 5 times. And it's just draining on you, your adrenaline. Every time you get ready, at least for me, if I'm getting ready to do a stunt that, it's going to be a thumper or something, the roll cage could collapse and you could, get a concussion or get killed. Your adrenaline starts pumping. Anytime you're going to compete or perform. Right. And that happened to him 4 or 5 times that day. And then finally we're like, that's it. That's it. We're not going to do the stunt today. And he was livid. He was,
because I guess he's ready to go, isn't he?
Yeah. And he had another job he had to go on. So I think we pushed the date or something happened. And anyway, it worked out that he was able to come back and do it, and did such a phenomenal job. And poor guy, he's a big guy, he's 6'4",
tall. Yeah.
He can't get low inside that car all that much. But the worst thing you want is when you're doing a big pipe ramp and getting a lot of air, is to land on your driver's side.
Yes.
There's not much forgiveness. There's not a big crumple zone at the front of the vehicle. The best thing is if you could land on your ass end. That's like the best. It absorbs all the majority of the impact, and you're not thrown against your 5-point harness. You're thrown back in the seat. But the worst thing is to land on your driver's side, and that's exactly what he did. He was so high in the air, he almost went over the semi-truck. The ass end of his car went through it.
Yeah.
And then bam on his side. I thought, oh my God, that's how you break your knees. That's how you fracture your shin. That's how you fracture your elbow. That's how, if you don't have the right helmet restraint, you smack your head and get concussions. But he was fine, but you don't hit much harder than that on a pipe ramp, I'll tell you.
It was just, I remember seeing, because it was the Stuntman Awards when I saw it the first time. I think it was 1986, the Stunt Awards. Lee Majors was the host of the show, I seem to remember. Yeah. And it won a stunt award for best vehicular stunt. And also over here, there are a number of top performers. Greg Powell is a great example of a stuntman who himself had done many gags in vehicles over the years with pipes and cannons and all sorts. And he said this one was just sensational. And do you know what I think really sells it? Is the fact that it's you've blended the pipe into the scene so that it's a construction thing, and there's these pipes, obviously they're presumably gas pipes or something pipes that are being worked on, and the pipe ramp is built into that, and he's just full 360 right through there. It's absolutely magnificent, and shot in just that slight bit of slow-mo just to give it an extra, and then it bounces. It bounces and then comes back onto all fours again, as the Porsche drives off in front of it.
Well, you remember that film well, yeah.
Oh, I think I must have seen that about 500 times, that clip. I really have. But that must give you such great feeling as a coordinator to go, look what we did. That's just spectacular.
Yeah, because at the beginning in the script, it was just basically a drive-by, just a
Right.
chase, And they're like, well, maybe some cars can get in the way to slow them to get some separation from them. And I said, oh yeah, or we could jackknife a semi truck and have them pipe ramp through the side of it. And they all looked at me. We could do that.
We can do that. Yeah.
It costs money, Hey, I want to share a story with you real quick, if I may.
Go on ahead.
That same year, 1985, you mentioned, was the year I doubled Sylvester Stallone on Cobra.
On Cobra, yes, it was, yeah.
And was one of my favorite car chases ever that I got to do. Well, now we fast forward 35 years, and I get hired to go to Oklahoma to work on a project called Tulsa King, doubling Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, that's recently. I remember that. Okay.
Yeah. Now I'm there dressed like him, same shirt. They did my hair, gold chains, everything. I'm sitting in this vehicle that he's supposed to get in. He's maybe 10 feet away from me, but he's talking to the director. But as he's talking to the director, he keeps looking over at me. Right? He's like, I know this guy from somewhere. And he's talking to the director and looking over at me. Finally, the director walks away and he looks at me. And I look back at him. We make eye contact and I go, didn't you do a boxing movie like 5 years ago? He goes, oh, Corey, I knew that was you.
Yeah.
How you doing? And I got out and gave him a big hug. And he goes, you're still doing this? I go, oh, I'm still doing this.
I'm still doing it.
You're still doing it. So
wow.
And I got a photo taken with him in front of that car, which
nice.
Missing would have been Terry Leonard, because he was the stunt coordinator on Cobra, and we got a picture together standing in front of that Mercury. But the stunt coordinator on this project was a guy named Freddie Poole, and just awesome guy who has been doubling Stallone like for the past 15 years.
Right. Okay.
But that was a lot of fun to see Sly again.
Now, just going back to Mr. Solberg for a moment, then a bit later down the line was a project that you were connected in, which of course was Forced to Kill, which has, again, for me, a spectacular pipe ramp which you perform, and the sequence in the chase. There's a chase sequence. You're being chased by Michael Ironside, and I've got a feeling that, because you're just to clarify, not only are you the stunt performer in this, you're also the star of the movie. Right, this is you've got a lead role in this picture, written it, produced it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of, there's no end to your talents in this particular picture. But Michael Ironside, and at some point during this chase, you're presumably chasing yourself. And how many times did you appear in that chase before doing the whole pipe thing? Because Russell was directing the picture, wasn't he?
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, Al Wyatt was the coordinator.
Yes, that's true.
Right. So it must have been
Duke boys. We got to go.
Exactly.
And Tom Sormento, who was the mechanic on the Dukes of Hazzard, was our line producer.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So we brought all the Duke boys together. And actually, the sequence that you're talking about, we filmed out in Valencia on the Dukes of Hazzard set right in front of the Boar's Nest.
Got it.
Movie magic. The way that all of that was put together was years ago. Famous stuntman, you've heard of him, Hal Needham.
Oh yeah.
The Los Angeles Times were going to release these theater commercials about people in the industry, and they wanted to do one on a stuntman. They went to Hal Needham, and Hal says, "Hell, I don't want to do that. Get Corey Eubanks."
Oh, nice.
All the stunt guys. I don't know why he pointed at me, but get Corey Eubanks. So they approached me, and at first I didn't want to do it. I thought, nope. Every other stunt guy will be, irritated or why Corey and not me? And there's a lot of egos in my line of work, myself included. You want, well, why not me? So I said, I turned them down, and then they came back and asked again, and you could do any stunt you want. And I said, well, you know what? I'm trying to produce this little independent film, but we do have a stunt in the film that maybe if you guys were willing to use shoot this stunt, and if I can have a copy of it when it's done. And they said, well, give us a 6-month window that's just exclusive on because it's doing a theatrical release called Stuntman on LA Times. Then you can have the negative and you can go and do whatever you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when Russell and I said, let's build a whole chase scene around this pipe ramp that I did through that trailer on the LA Times. Prior to that, for Glenn Larson, who produced Fall Guy, we shot a pilot called Highwayman. And I did a turnover on that, a pipe ramp through the trees in this police car, a tan-colored police car.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's in the same chase, though, right?
Yes.
Got it.
But shot at a different location on a different project, and I did that turnover.
Oh, that looked gnarly.
It was. It got one of those hit in the dirt and popped up and spun around and hit again. And matter of fact, after I did that, there were a couple of old-time stunt guys. I won't mention their names, but they were starting to say, okay, no, you need to rein it in a little bit. You're making it too dangerous. You're going too fast. This pipe ramp that I built was too steep, and that's unsafe. And I'm like, guys, I'm fine. As long as the roll cage is good, I'm fine. So how can you say it's unsafe? But anyway, I got a hold through my dad, who knew Glenn Larson. I got a hold of him, told him, hey, I'm producing this little film. I'd like to buy that footage from you if I may. He goes, Corey, I'll sell it to you for $2.
Oh,
so now I've got this stunt I did through the trees in the police car for $2. I got the pipe ramp I did through the trailer from the Los Angeles Times for free. And in the movie, I'm driving this Cadillac being chased by Michael Ironside.
That's right.
But also Michael's being chased and followed by one of these police cars, which the police car I smashed into. So I'm not chasing. I'm fighting, having a vehicular fight with myself editorially, and knocked myself off into a tree. And then I'm back in the Cadillac and I shoot Michael Ironside, who was supposedly driving the Blazer.
That's right.
That I then pipe ramp through the thing, through the trailer, and then pitch a 180 and come to a stop right in front of the boar's nest. So I was actually, if you think of it editorially, I was driving 3 vehicles in the same scene, chasing myself.
The magic of cinema right there. That's it explained. That was amazing. But through the, was it a truck or an RV or something you'd gone through? There's a little behind the scenes footage of the guys moving the pipe. You're saying, right, put it up here, and they're arranging the whole thing. It's just spectacular. Again, slow-mo. Do you think slow-mo just sells at everything? Because obviously I've seen cars turn over in real time and it's exciting, but in slow-mo, it just gives you something else. There's something about it. Everything disintegrating, and then that first impact and everything else.
I also think it's acceptable. It's been done for so long and it's very effective when it overlaps some of the footage.
Right.
You see a vehicle going, crashing through something, you cut to a different angle, it's slightly overlapping it again. It just kind of gives you a chance to, I want to see that again. And if it's not overused,
There's also a lovely moment because there's a couple of cameras covering this, and when you come through, there's a camera on the ground, which I think bites the bullet as you come through the whole thing. You land on top of that, and then it cuts to the other one from the long shot. But just wonderful.
That was $100 bet. That was $100 bet with the camera. The DP director, the director of photography, was also the director. And he said, do you think there's any chance if we have a crash housing, steel crash housing? I go, yeah, I know. We use those on an IMO. We use those on Dukes of Hazzard all the time. Yeah. He goes, do you think that if I buried that in the ground, is there any chance you would be able to land on it? I go, yeah, 100%. He goes, oh, you seem pretty confident. I go, well, this is what I do for a living.
It's my job.
I go, if I get the place where it goes. And so I knew how fast I was going to go. I knew that the vehicle
more or less
over 1.5 widths. I'm going to go 65 feet before I hit. And I paced it all off. And Russell was helping me because he was there making sure we got it right. And we said, right here. And right then, matter of fact, Russell Solberg dug the hole.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he didn't want somebody else digging it in the wrong spot.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Countersink that IMO. And at one point I thought, I'm going to go over it. and because it landed right on the ass end, came
Yes, it did. Yes,
on the camera, but that was $100.
well, you were already up on the deal anyway. You'd bought some of that footage for $2, right? So and winning 100 as well. That's fantastic. Well done. Yeah, I've always been a huge fan of that. And anybody who hasn't seen it, I know there's clips of it. I'm sure the movie's knocking about somewhere, but the clips itself, they are available on YouTube, and I urge you to take a look at it because it's very, very good indeed.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I sold off that film, so I don't get anything for it. But it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
You can just go on Amazon Prime and put in Forced to Kill, and you'll see a picture of Michael Ironside. It's a fun movie. We got horse chases. We got boat chases.
Ron Howard's brother getting not very well treated, to be fair with you. That was quite gnarly as well. But watch that, folks. If you get a chance to see it, I urge you to do so. It's huge entertainment. More stuff that you've been involved in. You've been involved in so many movies. If we were to go through your entire career, this interview would probably last, well, the best part of 3 weeks, I imagine. But I'm having to pinpoint a few bits and pieces. There's a number of things here which I think are terribly important. The car chase in Mission Impossible 2 has become, over time, a sort of exhibition chase on how to have two characters working dialogue in the middle of an action sequence. Leading up to this, it was often cuts. On this particular film, you've got Tom in one car, you've got Tandy Newton in the other, and there's this kind of ballet going on. It's you and Debbie Evans, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yes.
Debbie's in the other car. How much work went into creating that? Because you have to make a little contact. She has to make a little contact. The reactions have to be quite exact. How much detail went into that? More importantly, was it scripted that way from John Woo's perspective, or was it left down to Brian Smurs and yourselves to go, right, this is how we're going to create it? How did you craft that? It
was scripted that way.
Okay.
It was explained to us by John Woo that that's what he wanted.
Right.
The physics of it was the biggest challenge of what he was wanting, because if you have two vehicles spinning side by side, one's on the inside, that's the exterior cars traveling a greater distance.
Right.
It's like a wheel. The hub is spinning. Not the outside's got to travel a greater distance. So that was one of the biggest challenges. And I've worked together. Debbie Evans and I just worked together so well. And it just basically, I was kind of doing a pit maneuver with her.
Yeah.
And just staying with her when we did the pit maneuver. The thing that was to create that 360, which we did multiple times.
Okay.
And then there was one time that I bumped into her and she goes up this hill, turns, got sideways on the dirt and came down and punched me in the door.
That's right.
And almost knocked me off this cliff. Right. And my two tires, it's in the movie, my two tires kind of go off this cliff and I come back up onto the dirt. And John Woo, oh, great, let's put a camera down there and I'm like, no.
No, we're not doing it again.
No, that was an accident.
Yeah.
I'm not coming close to that cliff again. No, thank you. But also what I thought was interesting, if you study that, he flopped the negative on one piece with Tom Cruise. He's now in a right-hand steer car spinning the other direction.
Oh, right.
Did you notice that?
But you've just, I hadn't, and now it makes sense. There's something about that which has always bothered me. And I thought, why am I looking at it from a different point? Now you've just explained it. That's the reason. So he flipped it round.
He flopped the negative, so they're spinning the other direction so they could look at each other. But what a great guy. I also, John Woo is a phenomenal filmmaker. I did a thing called The Hostage with him for BMW.
Oh, yeah. No, I saw that. That was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, it's almost that to use a better phrase, but the triangulation of Crossfire. You've got something happening here, and because what he's done is he's flipped the film around, you don't notice it because there's so much else. Everything else is going on, so he just takes your mind off the whole thing. It's very clever indeed. Again, another extraordinary example there. Your work on Fast and Furious movies, I think, now totals 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Too Fast, Too Furious, the second one, Tokyo Drift, and 5. Without shadow of a doubt, that prison bus gag is just unbelievable. I suppose to look at it on paper, you think, okay, this is pretty exciting. And I certainly know that from a UK perspective, we had a thing over here called Stuntman 86. I don't know whether you had them in the States, but we had like a competition thing which ran for many years. 6 UK stunt performers would compete against each other doing varying stunts. Often later on, it became the stunt double. So this guy would be doubling the character in this sequence, and then this stunt double would then take over the story to this next gag. And one of them was a turnover of a coach, a bus, not as big as the one that you did, but nevertheless, these Dave Bickers was the stunt engineer. Greg Powell was driving, and they got cannons. I don't think they'd done one they'd done one the year before with a vehicle in the middle of the road, fired it, and it disappeared off into the trees. And this was a coach on the back lot of a studio. And when he hit the button and the thing went over onto its side, you go, wow, that's amazing. Now, not that many years later, looking at the stuff you're doing, you're rolling this thing halfway down the road. You know, the most extraordinary thing to watch. I know that it was a very complicated shoot. I also know that it didn't go terribly well first time round. But I want to know your feelings about being in it, hitting the button, and being then the passenger, because you've worked up everything up to that point. You can do no more, I suppose, up to that point. The stunt guys, the engineers, they've created the roll cage. You're in a little safe housing. You've got all of the stuff on. The adrenaline's pumping, and then you get to that point, and you hit the button, and then everything takes over. What explain to me and to people watching how what that feels like, because there's no way of describing that, I wouldn't have thought. But give us a flavor of the enormity of this particular gag.
Here would be an analogy that maybe people can relate to.
Okay.
A doctor's going to give you a shot and comes in with this needle, but the needle is 10 times bigger than any needle you've ever seen.
Right.
It's going to jab this needle in your arm. You know it's going to hurt, but you don't know to what magnitude. How much is it going to hurt?
Right.
That was how I felt. I felt like something's going to go wrong. We've rushed this process to build the cage, to get everything ready to put together. This has never been done before. They've never taken a bus like this and put 3 cannons that were 7 foot long, 10-inch ID inside diameter, 10-inch cannon that weighed 385 pounds with 50,000 pounds of pressure in each cannon. That's 150,000 pounds of pressure that's never been fired on a vehicle simultaneously ever. The bus, being a unibody, couldn't support those cannons, so they had to build a double-decker frame out of steel that added 14,000 pounds to the weight of the vehicle. It tipped the scales at 42,000 pounds. It's 21 tons. No vehicle has ever been flipped over that weighs 21 tons. We made a decision to take the steering wheel and everything, gas pedal brake, and move it into the center aisle. That just made common sense. Let's get away from the side and pull it back 7 feet from the nose to build the pod that I sat in. I say, thank God that it didn't work properly the first time. I think that I would have been crushed to death. I think
really,
because when that bus flipped over on the first one, only 1 cannon fired. So it went onto its rooftop, and then it kind of flopped back on its side. Right. But just that little rotation already dented my pod. The bus just was crushing in like it was, aluminum foil. It wasn't as strong as we thought the exterior of the bus would be. So when the decision was made to do this again, they had to repair the bus. I went to Matt Sweeney, the special effectsman, and I said, I have a request. I want to take another 2 hoops, put 2 more halos over the front of me, 2 more over the back of me of a 2-inch 120 DOM tubing, I want to put 4 more. We added 1,700 feet of additional roll bar tubing. Now we moved on to the day. It was, it was a real weird feeling, almost like I was being ignored by the crew, like dead man walking. Nobody wants to look at you. It was a real strange feeling. It's the first time in my career ever that I went and got my life insurance policy and gave it to my oldest daughter.
Oh, wow.
It was one of those things when I thought I left my hotel room that morning to go to set, that I packed up all of my bags and all my clothing and cleaned out the bathroom and but I'm like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be here for another night, but why am I putting all my stuff? Because I thought I was going to go to the hospital.
Right.
You know, or to the morgue. I didn't want somebody coming in and picking up my dirty socks, you know. It was a real emotional thing for me. It also makes you think about your own self-worth. This is a freaking movie. I'm doing something that nobody knows if the roll cage is going to withstand that impact. It's a flip of a coin. It was nerve-wracking. And then I think because I am a fighter, you click into that mode. Once you get in the vehicle and get strapped in, I get very aggressive. I almost get like an angry approach of like, let's just go kick ass.
Okay.
And I think that's to help overcome the fear.
Right.
At least that seems to work for me. And it was a lot. I mean, I wasn't just driving the bus down to a mark and hitting a button. It was along the way. I had to flick on 2 more cameras. We had interior cameras I had to flick on.
Okay.
We had a problem with the brake line that was leaking air pressure, so I couldn't even get the air brakes to turn off. We had 16 cameras on it. I had one button once after the first take, when it only went, and I smashed into the Charger that Paul Walker was supposed to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Lin, the director, comes up to me and he goes, you know, Corey, we were looking at the footage and it hits so violently. It looks like it would have just killed Paul and would have done major damage to the Chargers. Can you just go over it? Maybe can you just...
That was the next point I was going to say, because in the footage, and particularly in the behind the scenes footage of this thing, it just lifts, like glides over the top of the thing and lands in front. It's the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen in my life.
But what was funny about it, I was like, that was the most ridiculous question he could have asked me. Can you just go over the top? I said, sure. It's just like a feather. It's just a 42,000-pound feather. I'll just float right over the top of it. And I just walked away from him. And like I said, I get kind of angry when I'm nervous. And it was, I thought the most ridiculous, but on the approach, as I was coming in, I have to hit one button that locks up the rear tires to start to slide the vehicle. And I got another button I hit with my right foot, that's in the back of my accelerator, to fire the cannons. And as I saw I was gaining on that Charger, I thought, wow, if I wait any longer, it's going to hit it. I better do it now. And I hit the button, and as it went, I went, oh, we went over it. Knew I had cleared it because I didn't feel a tap or a hit.
No.
And then as that bus was rolling, I could hear the tubing snapping.
Everything falling off it.
The roll cage busting. And my surroundings were getting like tighter. The sound was coming tighter. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's happening. This roll cage is collapsing. And I'm any second now, I'm going to feel my head being pushed into my neck. Or it was a frightening, because it rolled 3.5 times. And I was going 60 miles per hour. 60. And I remember having that conversation with a few of the special effects men. I said, guys, you know about physics and stuff. And if we're taking 21 tons, throwing it 7 feet in the air at 60 miles an hour, what's that impact going to be? And everyone's like, we don't know. So I'm like, how do we know that roll cage is going to withstand that? Yeah. Everyone's like, we don't know. Like,
the amount of G-force that would have created as well on your body alone. But I mean, obviously the structure of the whole thing, you can see everything moving, and obviously you just said yourself, it's just coming in around you. Outside, it looks like it's being, disintegrating left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And inside, you think, oh, he's got to be safer in there, but you can feel it coming in around you. That's unbelievable.
And the other thing is this, the little piece of trivia about that stunt.
Mhm.
There were 3 cannons, but only 1 fired on the first take, and only 2 fired on the second take.
I saw the 2. I saw 2 go, but I didn't. So you just said then the third one didn't go at all.
When the bus comes to a rest upside down, right in front of the back tires, there's another. You could see the tip of the third cannon that never fired. So I don't know what would have happened if the third cannon fired.
Well, you'd have been in Kansas, I imagine, by the time that thing went off. If they all went off together,
yeah, I'd still be rolling right now.
You'd still be going now, exactly. Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary, and rightly so. You won a Taurus World Stunt Award for that, and I imagine that people in other countries are going, "What did you feel something that on the Richter scale? It was you cannon rolling this thing down the road." And again, if you've never you've seen the movie Fast Five. All those people have seen the movie Fast Five. Please go and look at that clip. There is Corey Eubanks Fast Five. Type that in, and you will find there's behind the scenes footage of this just unbelievable moment when he arrives behind the camera vehicle. Camera vehicle goes on, slides, bang, and then you've just heard that's how it happened when he glides over the top of the stationary Mustang that's in the street. Quite remarkable. You've jumped cars, you've rolled them, pipes, cannons. You've just answered part of this already, but is there something that you do to obviously you prepare yourself physically, you stay in shape? You mentioned once that this job, your body deteriorates over time because of the nature of the job. So you have to stay physically fit. What do you have to do here? Is there something that you have to do to focus on each job at a time, or do you take it? Do you try and put yourself into a place before each gag or each particular, not so much ND work or bits and pieces, but particularly bigger gags? Do you have to look after this as well and keep that as strong as everything else?
The thing that I have done throughout my career that I feel I love to talk about this is I'm a huge believer in the power of visualization. Psychocybernetics. If you have to envision yourself doing whatever it is, if it's a physical thing. Mm-hmm. And if you can't envision yourself doing it, then the chances of you performing that successfully are slim.
Right.
You can envision yourself doing it very clearly. Then I often request not to even do a rehearsal. I don't even want to do a rehearsal for timing. I don't know, well, we should do a half speed rehearsal. Oh, well, what's a half speed rehearsal going to do for you anyway? It's half the speed. Mm. I would rather, I envision myself doing it and go. So what I have been doing as I'm getting older now, I'm 60 years old. I've been doing this 41 years. My athleticism is not what it used to be. My sense of timing is not what it used to be. I'm just not as quick. Mm-hmm. So I am having to, even though I can envision myself doing it, I'm envisioning myself doing it with the younger Corey.
Okay.
Who had more.
Not with as you are now, right?
Yeah, with more reflexes and athleticism. So now I'm having to reevaluate certain things to allow myself maybe more time to get there, or it's hard to explain. But I have found that relying on my old instincts, my old sense of timing, I'm off. Yeah. I'm off. And a simple thing like just doing a T-bone, maybe where a vehicle's going past you at 35 miles an hour, you're a city block down, you got to come in and crash into the side of it. That's all timing. As long as that person that's driving the car keeps a consistent speed. And that's what I had to do doubling Stallone. And I was back there on Tulsa King, same exact stunt. But right. It's you find, wow, my timing's a little bit off. It's I think because I'm older, but I still believe in the power of visualization, envisioning yourself doing it over and over and over, and then and that builds the confidence in yourself too.
Right.
Because there's no sense in trying to go out and compete against anybody or perform some kind of a stunt if you're not confident. If you're not confident and you go in with a negative attitude, then you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What does Clint Eastwood say in that movie? Man's got to know his limitations. This is clearly what it is, you know. But what you're doing is you're evaluating everything based on where you were then and where you are now, and having to bridge that gap by understanding what you're capable of in regardless of keeping your physical capabilities. But you've got to be able to keep it all in here. So visualization is very clearly the future. For those people watching her thinking, how am I going to deal with this? Well, look, Corey's just mentioned that's the deal to go along with here. The success of your own channel, Stunt Stories, and of course the podcast, which is because the podcast happened much later. Do you like the podcast? Must be a great medium for you. It's like radio, right? I mean, it just works. You get a chance to chat with your pals over the thing about some great stories. Are you happy with that? Because it seems like it works, certainly from a listener's point of view.
You know what I'm enjoying? I have such unique, fascinating, incredible friends. These guys like the Al Wyatt Juniors of the world. I wish to God he was still alive and I could.
Oh, that episode would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Oh my gosh. They would think we're making some of these stories up, but there's so many extremely talented stuntmen and stunt women. They're phenomenal athletes. They got incredible stories that are 100% true. And it's like the best kept secret. Nobody knows about it. So I like to get a hold of these people and pull out their stories. And I don't know if maybe there's a trust issue because I'm interviewing them. If they think I'm going to ask them something stupid or what, you know, I'm not out to embarrass them or I'm out to celebrate them. You know, let's put the spotlight on them and talk about the phenomenal things that they have accomplished in their careers. That I'm sorry, it wasn't the actor, it was them that did it, you know. And that's the other thing that it's always been a little pet peeve for me, and that's why I'm, you know, no longer doubling Tom Cruise, because I you know, on a Howard Stern show, I called him out and said, yeah, he doesn't do his own stunts. You know, there's 9 guys I know, myself included, that have done stunts for Tom Cruise. And guys, it's a movie, it's a TV show, you know, it's entertainment. And still, it's just, I enjoy the podcast because I get to brag about my friends and have some laughs. I wish I had the ability to sit down, kind of like what you and I are doing, but in person, face to face, you know, and just, oh my, especially when we've worked together on certain shows.
Well, that's it. When I'm in the car or whatever I'm doing, and I go, oh, there's a new episode of Stunt Stories, right? I'll listen to that, and then you listen to it and go, they sound like they're having such fun, and it would be great to see that, you know, if that could. I mean, I know you did the whole thing down at when you were doing the videos and Fast House, right? So you bring the guys down there and you have an audience and there'd be great chat, and they were terrific. But these chats, you go, this is just 2 guys who work together, or guys and girls, whatever it is, and you've worked together over the years and you're just exchanging stories, and that itself would be terrific to be a fly on the wall and watch what's going on, because obviously we're hearing what's going on, but it looks like the 2 of you are having such a great time talking about it.
Yeah, we really are.
Yeah. Tell us about the fabulous car crash clinic thing that's now got to a stage where it's become an animal. It's become a beast. You've got people from all over the place. Did you have it originally in one location, then you moved it to Vegas? Is that how that happened? Tell us more about how this started and what you're doing. It's from an educational perspective about performers and understanding the car gags.
Yeah, you know, there are quite a few car stunt driving schools that I highly recommend, because we all know that repetition is the mother of all skill. You got to do it over and over and over. That's why basketball players are always shooting hoops. It's not that they don't know how, they're trying to, you know, continually, you know, muscle memory and perfecting and keeping sharp. Same thing with stunt driving. You got to constantly. But I realized, there's no clinic, there's no school that teaches you what I have learned through trial and error, what I've learned from some of the old timers, you know, from Dukes of Hazzard, and the little tricks of the trade for safety. different ways to hit a pipe ramp that you can get different effects from a vehicle. If you and I were going to climb into a Crown Vic and do a pipe ramp, and you go and we hit it the same exact speed, I guarantee you, this can sound cocky, but I guarantee you mine would look better than yours, because of the angle that I'm going to come in, the way I'm going to pitch the vehicle before I hit the pipe ramp. That's going to give it that extra little twist in the air. These are little secrets that a lot of people don't know.
Right.
And what I'm teaching at my car crashing clinic is the safety. Here's another thing. You could take just about anyone, if they're courageous enough, and put the proper safety equipment on them from head to toe, from steel toe boots to the helmet to the 3-layer fire suit, everything. That I have a whole list of all the equipment that I use for vehicles that are going to catch on fire. And you could strap somebody in and you could have them go straight down the road and hit a pipe ramp. It's when that vehicle hits the ground and they're either stunned because it's shaking your brain inside your skull. Sometimes it knocks people out. You're disoriented because you spun in the air and you don't even know what is up and what's down. The vehicle lands upside down. You've got gasoline dripping on the hot engine manifold, and now you've got a fire.
Right.
Fuel key's still on because they haven't turned it off because they didn't know to, and this fuel pump's still going. And now that's burning, and next thing you know, the whole vehicle's on fire. And it's on fire, you're upside down, and now you got to try to get out. And there's tubing everywhere because you've got a full roll cage in there. Right. And you go to hit your 5-point harness to get out, and you drop right on your head. You're in the fetal position, upside down. You're in a knot, and you're panicking. The chances of you getting out safely are slim. That's something that you need to practice. You need to learn how to do. So I have these cages, these cars that are fully caged, the same roll cages that I use for performing cannon rolls, pipe ramps, big jumps. And I take my students and I put them in these vehicles, strap them in with all the safety equipment, and in different configurations, on its side, upside down, on its passenger side, even on its wheels. There's a technique that I have, for me, invented for myself, which is the quickest way to get out of a vehicle if it's on fire. Or if you've gone off the road and down into a lake and you're sinking. So these techniques, these safety procedures that I have come up with, some of them did not work through trial and error, perfected. I've got all of these here, and I'm in a point, as I mentioned to you, I'm 60 years old now, and I'm starting to step back from doing these big, high-speed vehicular stunts. I've shook my brain enough for 41 years. And it's time for the new generation of young stuntmen and stuntwomen to step forward. And I just want to pass on this knowledge. I want to pass on these tricks of the trade that I have learned, that I have invented, that I have perfected, and pass it on to them to help them do these stunts safely. Because when okay, I've got all my safety procedures are covered, it reduces your fear of performing the stunt, which allows you to focus on performing the stunt.
Right.
And it's funny that one of the things I also do teach or talk about, there's two things I can't teach, two things I can't do for you. You either have to have it or not. That's courage and timing.
Right.
The two things I can't teach them, the courage and the timing. I can help you be more courageous because I'm going to make you feel safer based on the stunt seat, the roll cage, all the safety equipment that I use, and I'm passing on to them. And it's been a real joy for me. I put on 3 clinics in California and realized that the majority of my students were coming from the East Coast. They were coming from New York. They were coming from Georgia, New Mexico, Louisiana. I had a guy fly in from Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, this guy named Casey. And I thought, wow, why don't I move it closer to everybody? There's so much work going in Atlanta, Georgia, in New Mexico, Texas, New York. And I said, well, so I went and bought a place in Texas so I could put on my car crashing clinic in Texas, which is more of a central place for everybody. So that's my next clinic will be held in a little town called Stephenville, Texas.
the sleepy town of Stephenville, Texas, which will no longer be sleepy, I imagine. Once you've no. Those days of sleepy nights and calm evenings are now over in Stephenville. Well, I just you've done everything pretty much. You've done you act, you write, you're a stunt man, you're a producer, you sing. I've heard you sing as well, man. Is there anything that you don't do? Is there anything that you're yet to achieve, which is still on that bucket list of stuff?
You know what? The thing that you did not mention that I have done that I think it's time for me to go back to, because it's a passion of mine, is directing.
Okay.
I've directed 21 one-hour television shows as a first unit director. Mm-hmm. I've done over 80 projects as a second unit director for film and TV. I've written and directed 2 feature films, and back in the day when there was VHS, just straight to video.
Yeah.
Most fun I've ever had. The most fun I've ever had is writing a script and going out and directing it. When I did those 2 films with Russell Solberg, that I wrote the screenplay and I played the lead, because I was the cheapest actor that we could hire.
Right.
And Russell is the cheapest director you could hire. We look back on those days and go, those are the funnest times we've ever had. And that's what life's about. I want to go back to having fun doing that. And so I think that's, at this point in my career, I'm going to continue with my car crashing clinics to pass on that knowledge. I almost feel like it's wrong for me not to. Why didn't you tell us about this safety stuff?
Yeah. No, I see that. I mean, and it makes perfect sense for you to be doing that, because you've although you've been doing lots of other stuff, you've been riding horses, you've been doing this, you've been doing falls, you've been doing fire jobs, fights, you name it, you've done it all. But predominantly, people will remember you from that type of work that you've been involved in cars. So who better to create a clinic and pass that on than you, and who better to direct, come up with new ideas for pictures that won't involve you having to, have the headache for the next 3 weeks after this particular car wreck or etc.
Yeah, I just tell you real quick, this is when it came to my mind. I said, I got to stop doing this. I did a canon roll on a show called You Better Call Saul.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that show.
I I canon rolled a Bronco.
Right.
In New Mexico. And it was for Al Godo, was the stunt coordinator. And I'm like, how fast want me to? He goes, well, we need like 3 or 4 rolls. And I said, all right, so you want me to come in high? He goes, yeah. So it was one of those things out in the desert, on this desert road, where really I'm like, I'm not going to hit anything. It doesn't, I came in fast. I don't know how fast. It felt like around 70, maybe 75, and pitched this vehicle, and it hit, and it rolled 8.5 times.
Oh, wow.
When I got out, I was a little dizzy.
Yeah.
But the next morning when I woke up, I had like a letterbox of blurriness in front of me. If I looked up, everything was sharp and clear. If I looked down, everything was sharp and clear. But if I looked you in the face, if I looked anybody in the eye, it was blurry.
Wow.
And I don't know what damage I did to my retinas or my brain. And that lasted for about 2 days. And that's when I thought, I can't be.
God, I've got to stop doing this. What's that phrase? I'm too old for this shit. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. I think
it's going to have to happen. So you've probably made the right decision, I think, under the circumstances. And I think it's also fair to say that, in the US, as a country, and with a group of stunt performers through history, you've got, the most amazing list of stunt professionals. You've got Alan Gibbs jumping the Trans Am in Smokey and the Bandit, Bill Hickman driving through traffic in French Connection, Terry Leonard getting dragged under that truck in Raiders, Gary McClarty doing the first ever cannon roll, and all of that stuff. And your contribution to action cinema is absolutely in that same group. There's no two ways about that. I think it's very safe to say that you earned your place in that group. And for me, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, Corey. And I thank you so much for your time.
I am so flattered and honored, and thank you too. I really appreciate it.
Not bad. Not bad, eh? Corey Eubanks. I mean, come on. Wow. I've always had a little bucket list, you know, that you sort of tick off. Go, yeah, done. Corey's been on that for some time, and now I can finally tick that box and go, yep, done that. And he's exactly the same as he is on his show Stunt Stories. If you are a fan of podcasts, check it out. Stunt Stories with Corey Eubanks. You'll find it wherever you get your podcasts from. Wherever you find mine, you will get his. There are some episodes of Stunt Stories still around on YouTube. I know that there was a period, I think was it the first series or the second series? I think it might have been the second season. And you had to buy them. I think you had to subscribe to the channel and then you had to buy episodes. And I bought them in bulk. I remember doing that. So you may only have a few from the first season. But just great stuff. I mean, really, really good stuff. And some terrific stories, some terrific guests too that he has on. And as I said to him, you know, it's just like a couple of pals chatting over a beer. Or a coffee, depending on what time of the day it is. But it always looks like it's huge fun. And I would implore you to check that out. And if you genuinely feel, maybe you're in the business and you think that car crash clinic might be for me. If you're in that neck of the woods, well, get in contact with him. Check the details out. They're all online as far as that car crash clinic is concerned. And learn from the best. That's the plan. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going for a long lie down in the dark room now. There's only so much excitement I can cope with when you get to my age, you know. And until next time, we will bid you a fond adieu. Bye for now.